Hello, welcome to another exciting edition of the Charles Report, coming to you from Ormond Beach, Florida. It's October 1st, 2014, and a lot of things in the news to think about. Um, Probably the most interesting, from my personal perspective, and I hope you share my interest in this regard, is the fact that the Arab Spring seems to have reached China. I guess we would say this is an Asian fall. Millions of people in the street in Hong Kong hoping to hold the gerontocracy in Beijing accountable for not meeting what it promised, not meeting its promises to the British when the British divested themselves of Hong Kong in 1997 to have free, fair, and open elections in the territory of Hong Kong. Beijing still insists that they appoint all the candidates or vet all the candidates, and people of Hong Kong have the right then to vote on those candidates. That really doesn't sound, it sounds exactly like the kind of limited or zero democracy that we have here in the U.S. The corporations, the banks, and finance capital basically buy the candidates, vet the candidates that they put on the ballot that we have the right to vote for. Um, well, there's no doubt that Western intelligence agencies will probably be using this situation in Hong Kong for their own nefarious purposes. But the fact of the matter is that the extremely limited or non-existent democracy that exists there in Hong Kong is not what this highly educated and upwardly mobile section of the Chinese people demands and needs and really requires. So, if I were giving advice to the gerontocracy in Beijing, I would suggest that they consider living up and keeping the commitments they made to the West and to the entire world community to have free, open, and fair elections in Hong Kong. A lot of people are speculating that this is another Tiananmen Square in the making. I don't know that there were millions of people in the street. It looked to me at least 2 million people, maybe even more, were in the streets of main thoroughfare of Hong Kong. I've been in a crowd of 1 million people in Washington, D.C., and I know what that looks like, and this crowd is a lot larger. It's at least twice, 3 times that size. So, this is a crisis, an existential crisis for the regime in Beijing, and I think a lot of this has to do with the downturn in global capitalism and the fact that Beijing has a lot of at last the economic impact that began in 2008 with the banking failure, the collapse of Lehman Brothers, and then the bank bailouts has finally affected China. And what has happened is that they've used Keynesian economics to maintain demand, consumer demand, and other and invested in infrastructure as a way of keeping money in the pockets of workers. But obviously, the problem in Hong Kong is there are huge numbers of 20-somethings, young people, who have see no possibility of having career jobs for themselves that they spent years studying for in universities. And I think that really it's incumbent upon the regime in Beijing to stand up and live up to the commitments that it made to the world to have free, fair, and open elections in Hong Kong. Uh, in the news also is the terrible crisis with Ebola. Another person in the United States has contracted Ebola. As I understand it, they came from Africa to here. And naturally, people are wondering about the exposures that might have been the people that were exposed to this disease while it was in a dormant stage. I think there's a lot that we don't know about this. This whole Ebola crisis strikes me as very similar to the AIDS epidemic that happened back in the mid 1980s. It's always interesting the way these horrific disease pandemics or how a narrative is constructed regarding these diseases. With AIDS, it was, Africans were eating green monkeys or doing naughty stuff, sex acts with green monkeys. I mean, the green monkey theory. With this, it's the fruit bat theory that this virus has mutated to humans. I guess that's possible. Although I really think that something needs to be done to look beyond that narrative. I know there was a really awesome book that was written regarding the AIDS epidemic back in the 90s that was called The River, that detailed exactly how that epidemic came to be, and it was the green monkey theory figured into this, but in a completely different way. And anybody who's interested in this should Google up The River. I don't remember the name of the author, but just put in AIDS, and you should get this book. It has been archived and is available for free on the internet. And the basis of this book is journalistic proof. It's really a remarkable book because it details how drug companies have been doing research with captive populations in Africa. There's whole companies that that do drug studies for the major world pharmaceutical companies in Africa. And what they promise people who are willing to participate in these drug trials is free medical care for the length of time that they stay in the drug trial. And people are desperate. The reason they have such a willing captive population is because basically there's very little public health care in Africa, and either public or private, but mainly or any kind of serious health care. And so many Africans are desperate to get the health care they need and are willing to submit themselves to these very controversial and abusive clinical studies. So anyway, getting back to this book, The River, the theory was that one of these companies, and it involved a researcher at the Wistar Institute at the University of Pennsylvania, made some shortcuts in culturing some sort of a culture, using some sort of a culture medium that should have been human serum, and instead they used green monkey serum. And this is the actual truth of how the AIDS epidemic began. And the whole phony narrative was created to hide this fact that Western pharmaceutical companies were directly responsible for what happened. I've only read parts of this book and am familiar with the theory. I haven't read enough to say that it's definitely true, but the person who wrote this book was originally, I believe, a person of very high journalistic repute in Great Britain, member of the Academy of Sciences or the equivalent, Royal Academy of Science. And then after the book was published, was given some. There was almost like a conspiracy to beat this guy into submission, into rescinding what he had written. I saw him interviewed a number of times. So I'm not saying that such is the case with Ebola, but the lack of public health facilities in Africa, and the fact that where this disease has broken out has been subjected to 20, 30 years of war and civil strife, the likes of which is hard for us to imagine. Liberia was the country that Charles Taylor ran for a while, and where you had I believe it was the Lord's Resistance Army and children's soldiers. I mean, and so as a result of that, people's health is very vulnerable. And I think that the concern is that these diseases, such as Ebola, as we're saying, are a lot more dangerous in this era where the power structures worldwide, especially Western power structures, are cutting back on public health services and the social safety net to the point where people are who are exposed to these such terrible diseases as Ebola are a lot more vulnerable. And it's a shame that they don't take. Obama wants to put $1 trillion, at least $1 trillion, maybe more than that. It might have been $2 trillion into new nuclear weapons and delivery systems. There's a fraction of that could put together a worldwide public health system that could end the scourge of these diseases. Not only that, it could provide free water free clean drinking water for every person on the planet. And I don't think under those circumstances America would have the reputation that it has today as a violent, predatory nation, an imperialistic nation. And it would be the smartest thing that the ruling class and the power structure of this country can do. But unfortunately, they're so out of touch with reality that they don't even know how to look after their own survival interests, let alone the rest of humanity or the American people. So I don't think we're going to be seeing that happen anytime soon. Stocks are down today significantly. The financial bubble built around equities is bound to collapse sooner or later. The whole purpose, what has happened with QE, quantitative easing, and basically giving money away to banks for free, lending at 0% interest rates, means that corporations and businesses have been in a massive program of stock buybacks of their corporate stocks, which has forced up the price of equities. And this is the basis of corporate CEOs' high pay. As long as they can keep the stock up and the dividends coming, that's all that matters. And quantitative easing has basically created that kind of a regime where there's no money at all invested in research, development, retooling, and expanding of the economic infrastructure of the country. And most of that money, a lot of that money, is offshored into offshore accounts. These people don't even pay taxes. As I've said before, there's $38 trillion worldwide that is in offshore accounts, and that's where these people don't pay taxes. So that's just something to think about. And I can't think of anything else right now that is, maybe suitable for our daily meditation on the news. We certainly hope that things will end well for the young student protesters in Hong Kong. China today is a far different country than it was in 1989 with Tiananmen Square. And I don't think the gerontocracy in Beijing is stupid enough to try to pull another Tiananmen Square in Hong Kong. But naturally, we worry about the lives of those people, and we hope that their lives will be protected by the regime in power in Beijing. It's a brave thing they're doing, and I think they have the right to demand fair, free, and open elections. So other than that, I think there are the three topics that maybe we can think about today. And it's still a wonderful life, and I'm glad I'm alive, and I'm sure you are too. The world's full of challenges, and I'm confident that humanity working together can solve all these challenges. It's the best of times, it's the worst of times, as Dickens said. We're still glad to be here, and I want to thank you for spending 14 minutes with me today, and that I had the opportunity to spend 14 minutes with you. And I hope that you have a nice day today, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.